Connect with others in the Awaken Therapist community and join us over on Patreon. When you become a member of the Awaken Therapist community, you'll gain access to the exclusive consultation portion of this episode. Find out more at thespirituallyaligned.com. I'm Harmony Kwiker, licensed counselor, author, and visiting instructor at Naropa University, where I teach Gestalt therapy. I created this podcast to support therapists in exploring deeper dimensions in their work with clients. You'll notice that in each episode, my guest therapist stays anonymous. This is to preserve the anonymity of the client they present in our case consultation available on Patreon. In this episode of the Awaken Therapist podcast, I talk with a therapist who's also navigating being a new mom. We consult about a case where there was a huge rupture in the therapeutic relationship. I hope you enjoy this episode. As I'm sitting here with you in this moment, I'm really hearing those little sounds. I'm really just in awe and reverence of, becoming a new mom and becoming a therapist simultaneously. Like, what an amazing transformation. Yeah. How has it been for you?
Thanks for saying that. I mean, I think I'm just realizing how much those two roles feel similar. I mean, what's been a challenge, I think, is how much space I'm holding for my baby. I just came back to work this month, so then be holding space for other people, that's usually something that would come pretty naturally to me. It's a role I'm comfortable in, but I'm like, oh, wow, that tank is pretty low. And the space I'm holding for my baby, it's not even consciously registering the way it would in therapy. But I notice that once I'm trying to do that for others, I'm like, oh, wow, there's not a lot. There's not a lot there. But at the same time, I'd say there's kind of a surrender I'm working on of like, this is kind of my role right now. And it's just kind of leaning into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like finding and discovering and exploring your new capacity as you are in this moment, as opposed to the capacity that you had before.
Yeah, definitely. I think like the capacity I had before, that voice comes in and says like is squirmy and like I don't want to sit here. I want to do things for myself. And so it's like a challenge to kind of like, yeah, it won't be forever that I'm in this particular role of really needing to give myself fully and to just kind of like what is it like to just do that and be in that role and kind of surrender to it.
I can remember when I was a new therapist, also a new mom, and also teaching undergraduate psychology at the time. And I had mommy brain. I would tend to think of myself as fairly articulate, but words were just absent from my mind. And my relationship to my body was completely changed. Any idea I had about this physical form was altered wholly when I gave birth. Yeah. How's that been for you?
I mean, I'd be curious to hear what that was like for you because I feel like that's something I'm only just processing. I'm so in it right now. Like my body just doesn't feel like mine. So, yeah. Can I ask what was that like?
I remember this moment where I was giving birth. I was like in the transition, and I realized that I didn't trust my body. I didn't trust that I could do this thing that I was in the middle of doing. And my midwife came up to me and she just started rubbing my low back. And I melted. I just broke down and cried. And I feel a little shaky even just thinking about it. It was such a transformative moment for me. And yet, there was still this element of like my mind thinking I needed to push through and like make it happen. And the first time I've given birth twice now, but the first time was really like a reckoning for me in that meeting that place inside of me where I didn't fully trust my body, where I forced my body to do things. And every moment after that, especially I gave birth to a girl, like I really wanted her to know how much I valued the wisdom of her body. And it was just this unfolding of really discovering how to listen to myself, to trust my body as an inherent intelligent entity and being.
I love that. I relate to that so much. I think like talking about it, it feels silly to say, but I thought I had to consciously do something to make my body do the things it needed to do. It was like, well, it's not just going to do them. What am I supposed to do here? And just to realize how much the body is an entity of its own, and I'm actually along for its ride. I think that was the biggest takeaway. Like, wow, like just seeing what it was doing without me. All my job was in pregnancy, really, and then in giving birth is to get out of its way, like to not interfere with what it was doing. And yeah, I appreciate you naming all that because I think I hadn't put that into words. I think that's changed my perspective on bodies in general, where that to some degree we're maybe just along for their ride and they're kind of leading the show.
There's also this piece of babies are boundaryless and we are their boundary setter for them. Like we create the boundaries of their life for them. And so when I was thinking about you sitting with clients and your baby at home, the energetic umbilical cord is still there. Like you're still connected, even though you're not in that physical space together. And that I think for me really informed the way that I didn't feel like myself anymore because I quite literally wasn't just myself anymore. I was a mom who was still holding my baby, even when my baby wasn't in the room with me.
So true. Yes. So far, I've been doing sessions remotely from home, and my partner or my mother-in-law will sit in the other room with him, and we'll just like rush him in, to feed between clients. But yeah, I try really hard to like tune out any like worries about him, but it does feel like there's, I mean, it's hard to admit this, but there's like energetically part of me that's in the other room with him, and I feel some guilt about that, I guess.
Hmm. Like it sounds like you have a story that you should be able to let go and be fully present with your client.
Yeah. Like I want to give them their money's worth, so to speak, that I'm fully there with them for that hour and I'm mostly there with them, but yeah.
From my point of view, I think that exactly as we are in our humanity is the gift that we are for our clients and that they choose us for a reason. And the mirror of reflection that you are now that you've given birth, I imagine is just so much more nuanced and deep than before because you've gone deeper within yourself and with this baby.
I really appreciate that. That's a really useful perspective shift on it. I think it's also I have to remember the humility that like I'm not doing that much in sessions anyway. Like their wisdom comes through and, I'm just kind of a witness and maybe giving a little tap here and there, but
Yes, 100%. You know, some people, I hear some teachers say, teachers who teach therapy, that you don't want to work harder than your client. And I really believe that we don't want to do any of the work for our client. None of it is our work to do. We really are there as a reflection and a mirror and a guide, but they're the ones doing the work in a session.
yeah, I appreciate that. Totally. And that's such a good reminder. And yeah, I appreciate that.
I'm wondering how your emerging and evolving relationship with who you are now and with your body now has influenced your work.
On the one hand, I have to be so in touch with my body with breastfeeding. And also, I mean, I've been developing these gnarly knots on my back from just like, oh my God, like roots woven together. My life is so oriented around my body in some ways. On the other hand, I feel very out of touch with my body. I'm not oriented in my body in the same way. So I feel a little like off center, I guess. And that's something I've been working on with clients coming back is like, okay, can I feel myself here right now? Instead of feeling like, oh, he's gone. It's like this lack.
As you say that, to me, it sounds a little bit like before you had more sensation in your body, like more of your own vitality, your own sense of your aliveness and embodiment. And now it's maybe like muted or overshadowed by other louder experiences that you're not used to.
Yeah, I think that is on the nose.
And, you know, with Gestalt being such a body-based approach where our intuitive insight and our, that often comes through our own body is such a part of it. I'm wondering how that has been for you, just given the newness of that.
Yeah, um, a bit disorienting. Like I feel like I mean, largely through your class, I feel like I really tuned into sort of like what I would call my gut, which is so much my body in how I work with clients, but also how I navigate the world. So it's not that that's not there and it still speaks up, but it feels like it's like, whereas before it might have been kind of a sturdy pole, now it's kind of like this rope that's a little loose and it's kind of going this way and that way. And I have to kind of like definitely put more intentional effort into listening to it and tuning out all the other kind of stuff that's going on.
Maybe it's because I'm sort of through that phase. My kids are, in adolescence, but I feel excited hearing that because just in my own felt sense of growing into the mom that I've become, I really do believe that it's a part of a rearrange that happens inside of us, that's actually really, really important and really sacred.
I felt some excitement in my stomach hearing that. That feels really cool. I think there's a lot of parts of this experience where my first feeling is kind of like loss or grief. This helps me remember like this is an expansion. At least it's in that direction.
Yeah, you literally gave birth to a whole new dimension of a human being. It's like, it's a miracle. It's amazing. And the whole first year is the year of postpartum. We're fed this idea that it's 3 months or I don't know, whatever, you take a month off of work or something like crazy like that. But the whole year is really, really the unfolding of postpartum.
I appreciate that. I wish that was more thought of as the norm because there's definitely this internal pressure of like, I should getting back to normal now. Like, how on earth do people do this? I have no idea.
And what is normal now, anyways. Yeah, and I know that I think what I know about you is that you also like working in the deeper realms of the shadow. And I'm wondering how that has been just in your work with clients in general, confronting something that a client has disowned or rejected and really working in a non-judgmental, non-violent way to integrate and support them in that.
I love it. That's kind of the work that feels most exciting to me because it sort of reminds me of this idea of like the monster under the bed that we avoid and avoid and avoid. But when we finally shine a light on it, it's just this cute little bunny that's scared. And just like seeing people be able to accept these parts of themselves that they had so much shame around they couldn't even name or own them. And then realizing, like, oh, I'm actually okay. It makes me like feel warm and tingly just thinking about it.
I find that with newer therapists, there's this idea sometimes that if I confront a client's shadow, I might rupture connection. And I really try to teach new therapists that you actually build rapport by confronting the shadow. Like, this is what allows our client to feel fully seen and welcomed as they are. And I'm just wondering what's your experience been with that?
I learned early on that I can't not kind of challenge people on certain things. It's not authentic to me. And when I try to, if I feel that coming up and I try to like hold it back, I just come across as fake. And so I would say for the most part, I have maybe tended to attract clients to me that are okay with that and welcome it. I have had a couple ruptures. I think those ruptures are probably just because of how I did it, or maybe just, the person wasn't ready or whatever. But I agree with you. I would say overall, I stand by that. And I know for myself, I trust somebody more when they're honest with me.
It's such a nuanced place that I find is actually really delicate. And the way that my personality is sort of designed, if my personality was running the show, I would never confront a shadow because I just want people to like me. And my mind thinks that that's going to cause somebody to not like me. On top of it, being somebody who has seen everything about everybody and not said it throughout my life, like growing up as a child, which I think is really common to therapists, especially therapists who are attracted to transpersonal counseling. We're seers and we see the thing. And so this sort of tension point of I see the shadow and what is my role in this work with the shadow. And the difference between being a therapist and being in relationship with somebody is that our clients are coming to us to see themselves more clearly. They can't see their blind spots. They need us to be that clear mirror of reflection. Whereas my partner, for example, my husband, he might not want to be looking in the shadow in that particular moment. And so if I offer him a reflection that he hasn't consented to, then I've probably crossed the boundary.
I'm laughing right now because, yeah, I think I need a little work on that distinction because I've definitely maybe done that in my personal life a little too much. And you're right. People are consenting to it when they come to therapy, but not necessarily in personal relationship.
With my husband, I will say to him, I think I'm seeing something in you. And this is the same thing I say to my clients. I think I'm seeing something in you and I want to check it out. Like that's my way of getting consent. And I will say that to him. I think I'm seeing something in you and I want to check it out. And he has gotten so beautiful and graceful when he can't see the thing that I'm pointing to. He will say to me, Harmony, I believe you're pointing to something really important that I can't see yet. So I'm going to think about it, as opposed to getting defensive. And I love him dearly for that.
I love that. That's such great language and good for him for working with it.
I also think that when we confront a client's shadow, there's an element of our intuition that's at play where we're illuminating something that they might not be saying, but it's so loud to us, and our intuition can sense that it's important.
Definitely, this is something I've had to reckon with in myself is like realizing as much as I might think I'm hiding my shadows well, like I'm probably not. Yeah, that's just what came up when you were saying that, that just how, I mean, we all have that kind of intuition to some degree, and it just reminds me of how important this work is. The shadows are there. They're not going anywhere just because we deny them.
As you say that, I'm really thinking about how as therapists, how important it is that we claim and integrate our own shadow and do our own shadow work in those moments where a newer clinician, or when I was a new clinician even, was afraid to create rupture by confronting the shadow, there is likely something in our own shadow that we haven't integrated that sort of contributes to the discordance of that moment of a session.
So true. That, yeah. I mean, I think of, I might call that broadly like countertransference. It's probably largely shadow stuff of our own.
Yes, absolutely. Listening to real life clinical examples is a wonderful way to increase awareness of how to approach your work from this powerful modality. To listen to the full episode where my guest and I consult about a challenging case, join us on Patreon. This is intended for educational purposes only, and the content here should not be taken as advice or clinical supervision. Find out more at thespirituallyaligned.com. If you want to learn more about the art of transpersonal counseling, check out the Awakened Therapist Signature course at thespirituallyaligned.com. This is a go at your own pace course with non-contact recorded webinars, demos, practices, and PDF handouts where you can learn more about spirituality, consciousness, and subtle energy through the lens of Gestalt therapy. To learn more, check out our trainings at thespirituallyaligned.com and receive your course today sent directly to your inbox.